and welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jody, and on my channel I talk about Broadway and books. And in today's video, I'll be going over all the books that I read in the months of September and October, my September and October reading wrap-up, if you will. Or, I should probably just say at this point, my super late, very late, long overdue September and October reading wrap-up, seeing as we are now in the month of December. I'm usually always late making these videos on my channel, and I'm extra late making this reading wrap up because I recently had a cold and I just did not feel like up for making any videos on my channel up until now. So yes, explanation for the delay on this reading wrap up. In this reading wrap up, I will only briefly go over the books that I read in the months of September and October, as I have already made spoiler reviews on my channel already, where I already talked more in depth on what the books are about and my thoughts on them. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get on to all the books that I read in the months of September and October. So in the month of September, I read a total of 2 books. The first book I read was a book called Strangers on a Train by Patricia Highsmith. So Strangers on a Train is about a brief and random encounter between 2 strangers on a train that takes quite an unexpected turn. I really like this psychological and suspense thriller. I thought all the twists and turns throughout the story were really well done and not at all predictable. And the ending in this book is for sure one I will never, ever forget, just simply because it was just so shocking and surprising. The only thing about this book that I didn't care for was at times it was hard to follow along to the writing. But besides that, it was a really great book, and my star rating for Strangers on a Train was 4.95 stars. The last book I read in the month of September was a book called When in Rome by Sarah Adams. So When in Rome is about Amelia Rose, who is this pop star who is no longer feeling very fulfilled with her life as being a pop star. So she looks to one of her favorite films, Roman Holiday, for inspiration, and she's inspired by that film to take an adventure of her own. So she gets in her car from Nashville, where she lives, and she drives all the way to a town in Kentucky called Rome. And it's in this small town that Amelia finally starts to feel like herself again, finally starts to feel happiness again, thanks in part to the kind people of the town, and especially thanks in part to one pie shop owner named Noah. I really love this book. It was such a fun and sweet and charming small town romance about 2 people who decide to put their guards down finally, long enough to see that life can be full of unexpected surprises where and when you least expect it. My star rating for When in Rome was 5 stars. Now moving on to the books that I read in the month of October. I read once again a total of 2 books, and the first book I read was Trust by Hernan Diaz. Trust is a book that is split up into 4 parts, and each part is told from a different perspective on the same story. The story in Trust revolves around how great wealth can give someone such power and privilege, and how that person can take advantage of the power and privilege that they have and use it for their own personal gain and own personal agenda. I really quite like Trust. It was a very interesting book, and it's a book that very much reads like 4 books within one book because of how the book is written and set up. Something I believe that I forgot to talk about in my spoiler-free review of Trust is how throughout reading Trust, you're constantly wondering what narrative in the story is telling the truth, until you're eventually made aware of what the actual truth in the story really is. And it's at that moment when the story comes together fully, falling into place bit by bit. And I thought the way that the truth was revealed in the book was just really well done. The only part about this book I didn't care for was part 2. I found this section of the book to be, if I'm being honest, just extremely boring and dull. But, despite just saying that, I do still recommend reading this part of the book, because as you read more and more of the book, part 2 does end up just making so much more sense for why this part of the book was written in the way that was written and why it was told in the manner that it was told in. But you only get to that full understanding about part 2 if you've read the whole book. My star rating for Trust was 4.5 stars. And if you didn't know, Trust will be getting a TV adaptation on HBO, and Kate Winslet is set to star on the adaptation as well. Now for the last book that I read in the month of October, that would be Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. So Practice Makes Perfect is about Annie Walker. All Annie wants is to find her one true love, fall in love, get married, and start a family. So Annie starts to date in hopes of finding her soulmate. When that doesn't end up going well, her pop star, soon-to-be sister-in-law Amelia, thinks why not have Will, her bodyguard, be Annie's dating coach, someone to help Annie out on the do's and don'ts of dating. You know, someone to help Annie find her one true love so she can live happily ever after. I absolutely loved this book so much. It was really fun and cute, small town romance about two people who realize how their past doesn't have to define them or hold them back from living the lives they want to live. My star rating for Practice Makes Perfect was that this book was more than 5 stars for me. And in case you didn't know, Practice Makes Perfect is the second book in an interconnected standalone series. The first book in the series is actually a book I talked about here today called When in Rome. So When in Rome is the first book in the series. Practice Makes Perfect is the second book in the series, and the third book in the series is actually going to be coming out on January 7th of next year, called Beg, Borrow, or Steal, and the story in that book will follow Noah's sister Emily. And like I said, this is an interconnected standalone series, meaning you don't have to read one book to understand or appreciate the other book's story. That being said, I do recommend reading the books in the order they were written if you are interested in reading these books, because, you know, the story from one book does kind of continue as, you know, you get to the next book in the series in some way. So those are all the books that I read in the months of September and October. And like I mentioned at the start of today's video, I've made spoiler-free reviews on all the books that I talked about here today, where I talked much more in depth on, you know, what the books are about and my thoughts on them. So if you're curious more about the books that I talked about today, be sure to check out my spoiler-free reviews on all of these books on my playlist, Books I Read in 2024. So that's going to be it for today, and I just want to say thank you so very much for watching. It really does mean a lot, and I hope I helped you discover a new book today along the way as well. And until next time, bye.